Good morning, everyone. I would first like to thank the organizers for inviting us. Today, I'll be sharing some of the recent work on end-to-end speech recognition that we've been doing here at Kensho, together with our collaborators at NVIDIA, Johns Hopkins, and Carnegie Mellon. Over the past few years, there has been tremendous progress in the field of speech recognition, resulting in large increases of performance as well as drastic reduction of system complexity. Traditionally, speech recognition pipelines consisted of many individual steps. An initial acoustic model translates raw audio to speech units called phonemes, which are mapped onto words via a separate assembled pronunciation dictionary. The output can get further refined by the use of a language model. With the advent of large neural networks, so-called end-to-end models have been able to fully eliminate the need of intermediate phonemes and go directly from audio to text. Even the need for a separate language model has become less important as acoustic models are becoming better and better at handling long context in a large vocabulary setting. In most real-world applications, however, there are additional components in a pipeline to produce fully formatted text. To correctly understand the text, in the US, we sell 20 times more candy. We need to add correct capitalization and punctuation. Conventionally, such formatting models get trained similarly to textual autocorrect models. This, however, not only increases complexity of the pipeline, but it also means the formatting model doesn't have access to audio cues needed to correctly format the text, such as if US was pronounced US like the country or us like the pronoun. In the work presented here, we showed that given the right training corpus, acoustic models can be trained to return fully formatted text at an extremely high quality. So let me first show you a few examples of where output formatting becomes very important. One of the first, most obvious examples is capitalization and punctuation. Given the output string, the CEO retired, it's important to first realize that CEO is an acronym that should be fully capitalized. But additionally, the sentence actually carries a lot of meaning that drastically changes depending on the punctuation. With a period, it would be a clear statement that the CEO retired. However, with a question mark, it becomes only a question. Using conventional text-based punctuation models, it would be impossible to decide which of these two was correct unless you have access to the audio. Another example are non-standard words. In the sentence, in 15, we saw an increase of 13 bips. We need to know that 15 refers to a year, and that bips refers to a financial unit called basis points, which is written as BPS. At Kensho, such transcription formatting is not only a common occurrence, but also crucial to get right for our customers. At this time, I would like to play you a small example of the kind of audio we transcribe here at Kensho. It's a nice demonstration of how, despite the tremendous progress in recent years, it's still challenging to create models that generalize to a variety of acoustic conditions.
When you start excluding exceptionals from cash flow, investment, and cargo, you make it a much less useful number for the equity investors.
You can hear that it's very difficult to make out what the speaker is saying here. And if you send this clip to one of the state-of-the-art models of a leading speech recognition provider, you get the following nonsensical output. I will play the clip again and at the same time show you the correct transcription assembled by our in-house experts.
When you start excluding exceptionals from cash flow, investment, and cargo, you make it a much less useful number for the equity investors.
Probably you noticed that as soon as you see the correct output, you can indeed verify that that's what the person in the clip is saying. This is a nice little demonstration on how the ceiling of performance, even for humans, is actually very high and requires a lot of practice and domain expertise when doing transcription. So let me tell you a little bit about the data we have here at Kensho. Our parent company, S&P Global, is one of the leading providers of economic and financial data. For example, they record many corporate events such as conferences, product announcement, and earnings calls. The best way for our clients to consume that data is by accessing the transcripts of these events. One type of event in particular that I would like to talk about, because it forms the basis of our speech corpus, are earnings calls. These quarterly conference calls are held by all public companies. They consist of a presentation section in which the management team reports on what the company has been up to in the last quarter and what it plans for the future. It is usually then followed by a Q&A session where people from all over the world can call in and ask clarifying questions. So it's a very interesting corpus for many different reasons, but I'll try to name a few here. You can immediately see that this transcript is extremely structured. Right at the top, we give a structured representation of each speaker present on the call and use speaker text throughout the transcript. We also use meta text to demark special occurrences, such as operator instructions or foreign language segments. The contents of the speech has a lot of interesting corporate jargon, as well as contains real-world topics that people care about. I would also like to mention that each call is transcribed and cross-checked by multiple in-house domain experts to push accuracy above 99%. Analysts also follow a 50-page style guide to produce consistent formatting across call. In summary, our corpus goes back over 10 years and consists on the order of 15,000 hours per year and counting. And just as a rough number, there are over 100,000 unique speakers that we track over time and across jobs for over 10 years. To prepare our speech-to-speech corpus for training in speech recognition, we took a fairly standard approach. We use a double-pass aligner to get word-based timestamps, which in turn we use to create 15-second slices of aligned text and audio. We then apply a few additional filters. For example, we remove all slices with rare Unicode characters to simplify the vocabulary. We also exclude slices which contain currencies, since they tend to contain a lot of linguistic ambiguities. We also use named entity recognition to remove slices containing names. Even though these calls are public, we wanted to use this as an additional step to preserve privacy. And now to the results. We trained a large conformer style ASR model within two public frameworks, ESPNet and NEO. The vocabulary used in our models consists of 5,000 byte pair encoded units. Here you can see a few examples of what's in our vocabulary. You can see various business terms, capitalized words, and numbers such as 2020 or 5%. The results we obtained from both frameworks were high accuracy and exhibited strong learning abilities of the text formatting contained in our corpus. To convince you of the resulting model capabilities, I'll show you a quick demo of one of our trained models. On October 13th, 2020, Apple Inc. released the new iPhone 12. One of the major upgrades over the iPhone 11 includes the addition of an XDR OLED display. So you can see that what I said was transcribed correctly, and it actually contained a lot of formatting, all of which was done correctly. And again, to remind you that there are no rules or dictionaries here. The output is directly the greedy decoding of the acoustic model. Let's try another example. Cap rates changed 3 1/4 to 5 3/4. So what you can see is really cool. The acoustic model has learned to do quite sophisticated transformations here. So not only are the numbers with quarters handled correctly, but it also magically inserted the percent sign, and it got that from the context of cap rates being usually percent-based. For future projects, there are multiple directions we're interested in. Since we've been collecting data for over 10 years and counting, we could study the data over time to investigate effects such as different topics coming into fashion, different pronunciation of certain words, or change of meaning of certain phrases. Another area of study could be long-form ASR. Our calls can be over 3 hours long, containing 50 or more speakers, and context that stretches all the way from the beginning to the end of the call. Last but not least, the speaker data of over 100,000 annotated speakers opens up a wealth of potential speaker-related projects. I'd like to end by mentioning that, in case you haven't yet, you can download the dataset free for research use on our website, datasets.kensho.com, and feel free to email us with any questions you have. We're always excited to talk with colleagues around their use cases. With that, I would like to thank all of our collaborators and all of you for attending. Thank you.
So the floor is open for question. So we have Georg there online. Yeah.
Hi, pleasure to be here.
Hi. I wanted to check. You said that for each audio, there were multiple experts who have been labeling the same file. Is it correct?
Yes. So the way we have the internal standard set up is that we have to guarantee for our clients a standard of, what we call usually 99% accuracy, which means that usually somewhere between 3 to 5 people sort of subsequently go over each audio file to make sure that everything is transcribed correctly. I do have to say, though, however, that this is for the full transcript. So the multiple people transcribing things goes for the full 2-hour call of transcription. So, after we align it and we slice it up and then make it as a speech recognition corpus, that didn't again get cross-checked by people. So there could be, certain alignment issues that, a word is missing at the beginning or at the end. We tried our best to avoid that, and it looks pretty good quality when cross-checked, but that didn't get checked again.
I was just wondering on how you did the aggregation of multiple speakers' transcription, because like when several people are labeling a huge text, there will be some complicated issues, and the alignment won't be easy. Thank you.
Well, for us, it's sequentially. So it's one person will annotate it, and then the second person will again listen to the whole call and cross-check whatever the person previously did. So we don't have to worry too much about aggregating.
We have a few questions online and also another one in the room, but let's just ask one of the online questions from Samir Bansal, who says, "Great work, but what is the size of your evaluation set?"
I think the evaluation that we chose was, I believe, 100 hours or so. We mostly care that it includes around 1,000 or so separate events, just to make sure that we properly sample across difficulties of calls.
And that's another question from Samir itself. Is the data is limited for companies for a specific country,
country? I assume he means companies in the earnings call data. Is that right, Samir?
Yeah. So if the data is limited for companies for a specific countries?
No. So we tried to keep it, pretty much sampled in the same way as the data that we provide. So we sub-selected only earnings calls. We do have other event types, but for simplicity, we wanted to take earnings calls. And there is a certain breakdown over different geographies. I think the US is about 50% or so of the data that we provided, but pretty much all the different continents are in there, at least a little bit.
Okay. We've got another in the room question, I think, waiting.
Yeah. Mikko?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we've got one at the back.
Yeah, my question is actually a follow-up for the first question that came in the room. Given the complexity of the manual annotation task, I'm curious, just like if you have an estimate regarding roughly how many man-hours it required per hour of audio to transcribe, given the approach that you guys took.
That's a good question. I don't actually have numbers because interestingly, we don't track it internally because they're full-time employees. So they don't sort of work on a per hour per audio basis. But my guess would be that a single person can do almost real time. So a single person can do, let's say, 1.5x real time if they've been trained very well. And then let's say we have 3 to 5 people or so annotating something. So I would say a single hour of audio probably has somewhere on the order of 8 to 10 hours or so of human review.
And that also that includes all of the punctuation and like denormalization.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, so we actually, and this is sort of, how this was the original, the original reason why we started this project was to basically make the first step easier, right? So basically you have a speech recognition engine that proposes the first transcription to the first human reviewer so that there's a strong baseline to start with so that they don't have to type out every single word from scratch, but instead, they can use the ASR output as a starting point and then basically fix that up.
Questions are coming thick and fast in the chat. One that's been in for a while is from Igor, who asks, is the original S&P data publicly available?
It is not, unfortunately. That's why we had to release it separately. It is a product, though, however, depending on the usage. So this is the other reason why we wanted to release this separately as a sort of a training data is because the licenses are very different that you can get by getting data products in different ways, right? So if you for example buy a data license to just the desktop product where you can view these transcripts, you're probably not allowed to train on them. But if you're interested, feel free to contact us. We can always bring requests up to the mothership.
So we have here another online question we have from Tituan from Avenue University. Did you try to have evaluation sets distributed in different time periods? This would be useful to see if the financial language evolves over time and therefore if the model would need to be constantly updated.
So we didn't, that's a very good question. We didn't specifically look at it sort of in the course of this study and this data set. We did look a while ago, this was more actually in an NLP context, but we did look a little bit of drifts of even just basic word vectors. This was, back like, I don't know, 4 years ago by now or so. We did look at how different topics came into fashion and how like one obvious example was we looked at sort of drifts of word vectors, and then you can sort of look at which vectors of phrases drifted the most. And one very obvious example was always hurricanes. How like over a certain time, like a first name like Sandy or something like that would suddenly get a very different meaning in which it was used than it used to be previously as a first name. So it is definitely something that exists a lot. But we haven't specifically looked here. Empirically speaking, it's not as bad as we were initially afraid in terms of needing constant model updates. But of course, that depends on what your situation is. So for example, at the beginning of COVID, of course, very quickly there was a big need to update the model just because all the terminology around COVID needed to be in the model to actually be reliable.
Okay, so I have some more online questions here. This is Monica from Universitat Pompeu Fabra. How is the corpus formatted? Does it include information about language dialects in speakers or origin? Are there second language speakers or only native speakers?
Great question. There's definitely people with second languages because since all the calls are in English, but they're global in context, people call in from all over the world and speak various different languages. So the accents are very sort of widely spread. Yeah, so we do have a bit of a sample here.
I think we one final question from Suzanne Berger online asks, what's the speaking style? Is it conversational speech or dictated?
The style actually varies, which is kind of nice. So usually the first part of the call is sort of presentation style because it's prepared remarks by people that work at the company, and then later there's a Q&A section, so people call in and ask specific questions and give answers. And maybe also just briefly to the previous question, we try our best to give a rough estimate on where these calls are coming from by basically looking at where the company is based that this call is hosted in. And but like I was saying before, we do have information about who the people are that call in, but we don't know anything about their nationality. So we can't really, like, even if we know that it's me, Georg Kutzko, speaking there, All we know is that person is speaking in English and calling in for a company that is based, in Europe somewhere, but we don't actually know whether that person has a certain nationality or has a certain language skill or not. So, we try to estimate a little bit that information, but we don't have detailed information about that, and it's also not included in the corpus.
Right. Thanks very much, Georg, for joining so early in the morning. Let's give Georg a round.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.